Ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, I'm Ephraim225 and I welcome you to yet another one of my 1-hour playthroughs. And this time around, I'm finally continuing with the Mega Man X series. This is Mega Man X4 for the PlayStation, what some might consider the last good Mega Man X, because after this you've got the woefully average X5, the very, very painful to play X6 and X7. That's all I'm gonna say, X7. And then the apology known as X8, which I don't really think was as good as I remember it. But yeah, we'll get to those in the future, maybe, but X4 is actually really, really groundbreaking for this series. I overlooked this so much back when I first played it, because I had played X5 and X6 first, and that's not good for anybody who wants to get into Mega Man. Don't play those first. But X4, it plays very fluidly, it controls really well. I'm actually showing off a bit of quality of life that was, I think, introduced in X4. I can't remember it being in the previous games, but if you hold the dash button and jump, you automatically dash jump instead of having to dash and then jump, which helps out a lot in this game, honestly. It also applies to kicking off of walls, but I don't really know when that was introduced. It had to have been introduced in one of the previous X games, but I'm not certain. Anyways, you can see that I'm playing as Zero. He has been fully fleshed out as a playable character, as opposed to being a sideshow for X3. And he plays, like, he brings a really unique playstyle to the table here. As you can imagine, he attacks with his saber instead of a buster, so you've got to get in close to your enemies, and Zero actually takes more damage than X does. So it's a risk-reward thing. You've got to play more risky with Zero, but you're rewarded for it because he can do a lot more damage, and I did not know you could climb on that wall. Interesting. So yes, we're going through the intro stage here, which is a pretty good example of why you don't want to build a city in the sky, because Mavericks have destroyed the entire city and sent it crashing into the ground. Like, that's not the biggest thing that's going to crash into the Earth in the X series, but we'll get to that later. So in this game, they introduced a kind of love interest for Zero in the form of Iris. I don't really know how robots can love, but you know, they're starting to develop human-like emotions. Or they've had human-like emotions since X was discovered. So I guess a love interest is something that could happen, but it doesn't really come up that much in the story. Like, I'm going to be skipping all of the cutscenes. They started putting in a bigger emphasis on story in X4, which is fine, I guess, but, you know, people who have played X4 probably remember it for its really awful voice acting. Like, the English dub is so bad that there is actually a mod that will restore the Japanese voice acting in English X4, which I did not install. Like, I think it's better with the corny voice acting because, like, Zero's clips in particular, they're so silly. Like, you've probably been listening to him throughout the stage going, ha, ha, yeah, and hoo-ho-ho. I should not imitate Zero's voice acting. But anyways, that's part of the reason I picked Zero for this playthrough. The other reason is that if I eventually get to X5, I would want to play it with X exclusively, because if you play as Zero in X5, it's just so easy to beat the entire game, you can just destroy it. X5 was not balanced around Zero, so I would definitely select X for X5 if we get there. Anyways, the game is introducing us to the 8 stages. The plot of this game is that the Repliforce, the Reploid armed forces, I guess, because they have that for some reason, they're not happy with the government's ability to just label anyone Maverick whenever they choose. So they have basically, like, they've thrown a coup. They are trying to gain independence for themselves. And they're probably going to, well, they're probably going to do something bad. I don't remember the plot of this game. So we've selected the first stage. That boss intro, by the way, that's probably the best boss intro in the whole Mega Man franchise. Like, you've got this epic music, the announcer screams the boss name, and you've got that little description of what the boss is doing in the stage. Really nice. It just flows really well, in my opinion. So, the first boss I've selected is Split Mushroom. We're getting into robot mushrooms now. That's really weird. But it's probably an odd choice for first pick, because most players would pick Web Spider first. But Zero actually gets different weapons from the bosses than X does. And there's also an armor piece for X in Web Spider, but you can't pick up any armor pieces as Zero, obviously. Like, X4 forces you to pick a character at the start and then use that character exclusively for the entire playthrough. Which, they changed that in X5, which is probably for the better, but I don't know. I think I'm okay with playing the same character the entire trip. Anyways, Zero gets a very good weapon, or I should say technique, from Split Mushroom, so that's why I'm going to him first. Even though it might seem odd, like, Split Mushroom's weakness is held by Web Spider, so it might make better sense to play Web Spider first, but there's a reason I'm not playing Web Spider first. We'll get to that later. So we have a mini-boss here. The idea here is that you have to destroy it before it takes out all of the platforms, and then you just get sent into the spikes and die if you haven't done that by that point. So you've got to rack up as much damage as possible, and I actually don't remember how this goes for X. It would probably be very painful for him, unless the X-Buster does a lot more damage than I remember. But you can chain a lot of hits with the Z-Saber. That 3-hit combo is very, very good. It's a lot of fun to play as Zero in X4, even though Saber gameplay wouldn't be refined completely until Inti Creates would create Mega Man Zero, and that game series has way better Saber gameplay. But yeah, this is still pretty good. So we can see that they've recycled the initial area of Split Mushroom Stage for the second area here. And they just changed the color. I don't really know why they did that. I suppose the graphical effect is very interesting. So coming up in this next area, we have the first heart tank. Even as Zero, you're still collecting heart tanks, and you're going to want that because with how much damage and knockback Zero takes, you're going to want as many heart tanks as possible. In this playthrough, I find all but one of the heart tanks, just because I don't remember where it is. I was too lazy to look it up, but I will still get the other 7. Like, the only power-ups available to Zero really are heart tanks, sub-tanks, and a new thing called a weapon tank, and another new thing called an EX tank. I didn't find the EX tank either. I'm pretty sure there's one in this game somewhere. But the weapon tank is actually hilarious because it's completely useless to both characters. I'll talk more about that later. For now, we have an elevator segment. Because every X game has to have one of these elevator segments, right? I don't really get why they keep including these. This is so slow. The only troublesome bit is right here, because you have this flower coming out of the walls with the spikes. Don't dash too fast or you will get crushed by the block on the other side of the room there. And the rest of this is just really easy. I don't really know why this elevator segment is here. See, the thing about the X games past X4 is that they can kind of feel like they're way too easy. Like, even if you're playing X6 or something where you die a lot, you still effectively have infinite lives, because continuing doesn't take you back to the beginning of the checkpoint area. Anyways, onto the Split Mushroom boss battle. This guy is a lot like Gemini Man from Mega Man 3, because, like, he sends out all of these copies of himself, and then, after he's done spreading this powder that doesn't really do anything, a second Split Mushroom appears and you have to attack the real one. Oops. I made a mistake with my voice there. Unlike Gemini Man, only one of these two Split Mushrooms takes damage. And when he does this attack, it's very easy for him to leave himself vulnerable to your 3-hit combo. Air slashes do a decent amount of damage, but the 3-hit combo is always going to do a lot more damage. I don't show it off, but there's actually a technique you can do as Zero called the Saber Dash Cancel. Speedrunners use this a lot. Basically, you do the first 2 slashes and then dash slightly, and then you do 2 more slashes over and over again. The slashes and the dashes cancel each other out, so you are effectively doing a lot of hits to the boss without triggering the invincibility frames, because you notice that the air slash and the 3rd hit of the 3-slash combo triggers the invincibility frames. So instead of getting weapons, Zero gets techniques from bosses, and you activate these by inputting some sort of command. Actually, the Kuenbu, which I just got from Split Mushroom, it doesn't have an associated command. It is actually just a double jump. And if you slash in the air after double jumping, well, actually even before double jumping, you will do a spinning slash, which has some nice applications, but it kind of feels less fluid than the air slash that I had before I picked up that weapon. So anyways, none of Zero's techniques take up any weapon energy except for this thing called the Giga Attack, which I will explain when we get to it. And because of that, the weapon tank and the weapon energy pickups are actually kind of useless because Zero doesn't even use any weapon energy. Anyways, we are into Magma Dragoon stage, which is probably my favorite out of the 8. Shame I have to take it on right now, but the weapon you get is so good. It's useful in a lot of places. Right, so we have a very much hot area to go with the weather in the area where I live. I'm already sweating. Like, just the combination of looking at all of these fireballs and stuff, and the fact that the weather in general is very hot right now. That's summer for you. Everyone goes on vacation, and then they either melt, or they just go into a beach somewhere, I suppose. Anyways, I should talk about the actual stage. A lot of fireballs going around here, and there are guys in armored carriers, which means we must be seeing some ride armor real soon. That's a very easy heart tank to pick up. You just gotta double jump up there. That's why I wanted the double jump first. It gives you access to a lot of areas. And if you were playing as X, you would want to take on Web Spider first to get his weapon, because the spider web, or is it the lightning web? I think it's called the lightning web, but it creates a small web that you can actually climb onto. So that's X's version of the double jump. It's just creating another platform. Anyways, you can actually take the ride armor into this boss battle, which makes it very, very easy. So of course I'm going to use it. Magma Dragoon... Oh, wow. I mispronounced that completely. Magma Dragoon is a more difficult boss than you might imagine. But what you might notice is that he is shouting Hadouken and Shoryuken. Well, he actually gets most of his moves from the Street Fighter series. Like, he's basically a Kuma. He's got a Shoryuken, he's got Hadoukens, he's got a Super Hadouken, which he might try and use. But yeah, since the ride armor protects you from all damage, you can just obliterate his life bar. Look at that. He's already down to yellow, which would normally trigger additional attacks, but I don't think he's going to use one. He's got a couple of blind spots in his attacks as well, so the key to fighting him is to find those blind spots, use them, and just slash him to death. Avoid the air slash because it doesn't do as much damage as a triple slash. Oh yeah, and plot here, Magma Dragoon was also an ex-hunter, but he betrayed everybody and sent Sky Lagoon crashing into the ground, something like that. Alright, so what you get from him is the Ryu Engine. I think I pronounced that correctly. I don't know if the English actor pronounces it right, but that move might sound familiar if you have played Tatsunoko vs. Capcom or Marvel vs. Capcom 3, because Zero appears in those games, and the Ryu Engine is effectively his Shoryuken. And that's how it works in this game too. You hold up and press triangle, and he does an upwards air slash with fire. So that's always good, right? The next stage we're looking at is Cyber Peacock, an interesting stage. This opening area, it actually grades you on how fast you get through these areas, and with the air slash that was given to me by Split Mushroom, and assuming you don't run into these yellow orbs like I just did, you can get through quick enough and receive a special reward for clearing each of the areas with an S rank. Now this first area just has a 1-up, which is not that interesting. If I were playing as X, there would be an armor piece in that area. The head, I think, which gives you infinite weapon energy, further rendering the weapon energy drops and the weapon tank useless. So yes, very easy to get through these areas fast if you have that aerial spinning slash. This second area, if you get an S rank, it rewards you with a heart tank, and the third area will reward you with the first sub tank. Interestingly, there are only 2 sub tanks in X4 onwards. I'm not sure why they decided to do that. The weapon tank isn't very useful, so that was kind of what they replaced it with. But I suppose if it makes the game just a little bit more challenging, only having 2 sub-tanks instead of 4 to fill up and use, I suppose that's fine. Another change to sub-tanks is that you do not have to be at full health to fill them up. If you pick up an energy drop, then a little bit of it will always go to the sub-tank, even if you're not at full health. So that's nice. Just another quality of life thing, I suppose. Right, so these areas are a little bit tougher for X because he has to use, well, I guess they're not that tough. He has to use a weapon called the Soul Body, which you pick up from Split Mushroom. It creates one of those little duplicates of yourself in front of you, which is not that helpful for X. I mean, he just has to shoot at things. It would be more helpful if Zero had one, hint, hint, hint. Alright, so in this area, you are playing around with gravity. Actually, kind of an interesting stage gimmick. Every time you push a button, the gravity changes, and you've got to use that to get those giant spheres to clear through the purple blocks. This entire stage takes place in cyberspace, which, I guess it's some kind of computer world? I don't really know. They don't really elaborate on cyberspace until, like, the Zero series with cyber elves and all of that stuff. But anyways, we're up to Cyber Peacock. He is not a boss that I like fighting, at least without his weakness. By the way, in this playthrough, I'm going to be using weaknesses for basically the entire trip if I deem them necessary. And boy, do I deem them necessary. So what you're seeing here is basically the way you would fight him without the weakness, and he does a lot of damage. You just jump to the top, you wait for him to do his move, and then you rush in for one single hit. It takes forever. This is basically a boss that you want to fight as X instead of Zero. But I'm playing as Zero for the entire trip, so I gotta do this with Zero. So you can see how annoying that might be. Also, he has a desperation move where he shoots out homing projectiles at you. Those are annoying as well, but you can hit him basically out of any attack you want if you use the Ryu engine. And I'm gonna pronounce that incorrectly, I just know it. But yeah, like, if I did not have this technique, what I would do is basically hope that he uses the desperation move a lot more, because then you could just hit him a lot more often. But yeah, that would be very tricky to dodge. So we're just going to make this easier on ourselves and use the weaknesses when they come up. Because, like, that goes against my normal policy of using just the Buster on the first battle, and then in the refights using the weaknesses. But whatever. I'm playing as Zero, and that basically means techniques are, well, they don't even use up any weapon energy. I think you're expected to use them a lot throughout the game. So we got the Raku Ho-Ha. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce these, I'm sorry. But that is actually the Giga attack that I was talking about. If you hit R2, well, I changed it to R1, but if you hit R2, Zero does this little earth-shattering attack that spreads a bunch of bullets throughout the screen. That's going to be used a couple of times because you actually get invincibility frames when you use it. By the way, this stage has a Blizzard Buffalo cameo. Nice, huh? And there's going to be... I don't think there's a Crystal Snail cameo. I don't really know if those things in the ice right there are supposed to be Crystal Snail. But anyways, this secret area up here is basically where you fill up most of your sub-tanks. And of course, we have ice physics to worry about because this is the ice level, and there's going to be like this ice area that actually cracks behind you, so you've got to go quickly, otherwise the floor will collapse under you and you'll hit the spikes. That's nice, right? If only they had added like a snowboard or some kind of auto-scrolling snowboard segment like that, then it would have been really annoying, but luckily they didn't do that, at least not in this game. Alright, so we have a section here that's kind of annoying. You have to wait for that first platform to break, and then you can just drop through all these platforms. I don't really know why they, included that. It's not really a threat, but they did revisit the idea in X8, so I guess that's nice. Can you spot the Chill Penguin cameo? I wonder where you could be. Like, that's a really interesting cameo. I wonder if they just edited the SNES sprites, or they made an entirely new sprite. Anyways, this mini-boss, not very difficult. Just hit him with Ryu Engine a bunch of times. Ryu Engine is this stage boss's official weakness, by the way. Like, if you got X's equivalent of the Ryu Engine, it would be the weakness as well. Also, this stage is weird. It actually has two stage themes, one for that first area and the second for this area. I have no real idea why they did that, but they're both nice songs, I suppose. Very relaxing to listen to, and I need to chill out, because I'm already sweating because of this weather. Have I mentioned the weather? So yeah, the heart tank is in here somewhere. I don't really know where it is. This stage is the one whose heart tank I did not pick up. I did pick up the weapon tank, though. It stores and refills your special weapon energy the same way the sub-tank would refill your life energy. And these enemies here, if you don't destroy them fast enough, they actually freeze the area and cover it in ice, which is not good, because that adds ice physics to the area, so better destroy them quick. Unfortunately, I did do that for all of them. Oh yeah, another item that I haven't mentioned up to this point is the EX tank. It makes it so that you start each stage with 4 lives instead of 2. Not going to be something I want to go out of my way to get. Like, there's no Hadoken or Shoryuken Easter egg for collecting all the items, so really no point in getting it wherever it happens to be. I'm sure it's somewhere in one of the stages. Anyways, we're up to Frost Walrus, who, I failed to mention this, but in his little boss intro, he was actually covering up part of the text, so I have no idea what this guy is all about. Well, I guess he could be all about melting, because that's what we're going to do to him. Because after you hit him with his weakness, like, he always does the same move after you use his weakness on him. This is another thing about the X series that I don't really get. Like, if you use the weaknesses on the bosses, they always fall into this really easy pattern. And, I guess after saying that, I shouldn't be using weaknesses here, but, like, you've always got it available, so you might as well. Like, if you beat Magma Dragoon, that is. And he's not even going to be able to do his Desperation move here, because I'm going to destroy him before he actually gets the chance to show it off. So, yeah, not the smartest boss in the world. Even without weaknesses, I think that guy would just not be interesting to fight at all. But we get a pretty good move from him as well. From Frost Walrus, you get a move that lets you do a downward spike attack, and the input for it is down in the special weapon button. Hyōretsuzan. I don't even know why they left all of these in Japanese. I guess they thought it would... Well, either they thought it would be cooler, or they just thought... Or they were just lazy. That's what I wanted to say. So after beating 4 of the bosses, there would normally be a cutscene there. I just skipped over it. It's interesting. X has to actually fight a boss that will appear later on after he beats 4 regular bosses, but Zero can skip it completely. I don't really know why they did that. I guess they just wanted to animate a cutscene, and they ran out of disk space, so they didn't animate a similar cutscene for X. I don't know. Anyways, we're in Jet Stingray's stage, and this is X4's bike stage. Yes, the entire stage takes place on this bike that you can shoot from, and you can also dash, using the dash button, of course. This is the only bike stage in the whole series that I actually like. You know that I don't like the one in Extreme 2 for the Game Boy Color, and I definitely don't like the one in X5. We'll get to that eventually. Anyways, you can snag that heart tank by not jumping and moving forward at the 3rd gap. And this first area is alright in my opinion, but the second area is not so good in my opinion. And the reason for that is, like, if you get crushed on the side of the screen, then you die instantly. And unfortunately, the dash that the bike has, it takes away your ability to jump or do anything. So if you dash, there's a brief moment where you can't do anything and can only watch as Zero gets smashed on the side of the screen. A big problem in this area because there are a lot more dangerous platforms that you have to get through. Like, you can obviously see by my life count that I edited out a couple of deaths, because I was trying to get to the sub-tank too. The other sub-tank is in this stage, and it's very tucked away in a hidden corner that you have to dash at exactly the right time in order to pick up. Especially if you want to avoid dying. But the stage is very interesting because the boss actually attacks you throughout the stage, and you can hit him by dashing into him, but it doesn't really hurt him or anything. His life bar is still full when the boss battle starts. Anyways, that's where the sub-tank was. You have to know to dash there, and they are very courteous. They refill your entire life meter in time for the worst boss in the entire game. Seriously, like, if you've ever gotten hit by Jet Stingray, well, you're either careless, you're either, like me, I was too lazy to do this with no damage. Like, you have to be very careful to do it with no damage. If he does that at the start, that might trip you up. But the thing is, when he's doing this move, he's completely vulnerable if you just stand under him. These little stingrays are easy to destroy with a single slash. And later on in the fight, after doing this move with the stingrays, he will move down to the bottom, and there's actually a very convenient blind spot right behind him. Like, you'll see it eventually. Like, maybe right here? Yes. If you are standing where I am right now, he cannot hit you, and you can just go crazy on him. That's nuts. You probably can't saber dash cancel, but whatever. It's also a very convenient place to hit him with his weakness, which is actually the downward spiking move that I just got, because he's weak to ice for some reason. I don't know if that's biological, or if it's just... I don't know. It could be the fact that he's underwater and water freezes, doesn't it? Anyways, nice to hit him while he was in the middle of his desperation move. That's nice. So you don't really get an interesting move. Like, some of the bosses, they don't really give Zero any interesting special attacks. They give him, like, new stuff that he can do. Like, Split Mushroom gave us a double jump, And Jet Stingray is going to give us an air dash. Unfortunately, it's just an air dash. It doesn't really do any damage or anything. Hienkyaku. Yeah, I'll work on my Japanese some other time. Right, so yeah, he couldn't air dash up until this point, which is weird because Zero has an air dash in just about every other X game that I can think of anyways. And eventually X got his own air dash that he doesn't even need an armor for. So that's nice. Next up is Storm Owl. Possible relation to Storm Eagle? Like, they both have Storm in their names. I guess they couldn't figure out another word to use other than Storm. And have it, like, not turn out to be completely stupid, because, yeah, owls are very difficult to make them very cool, I suppose. I'm sure there's going to be an owl fan somewhere who's going to tell me about all the cool owls of the world. Please do. So there's a ride armor in this stage too. Unfortunately, I really don't like this ride armor. It has the worst attack. It's just a thing that shoots forward, and it has a charge shot as well. And I'm basically only using it so I can damage tank through all of this and grab that heart tank. If you are not quick enough, then that heart tank will be destroyed by the laser, and you will have to replay the stage again. So yes, that ride armor didn't last long. I don't really like using it. I would probably just choose not to use it if I had the option. Well, I did have the option, but you know what I'm saying. Anyways, those lasers do a lot of damage, so be careful of that. And we move on through this Air Force. All of these are like planes and gun turrets and stuff, with missile launchers and everything, and convenient platforms. And Zero gets to the end and teleports to the next area. Well, Zero, why didn't you teleport directly to the area with the boss in it if you're just able to teleport wherever? I don't know. Like, that's one of the great questions of the Mega Man series. Like, in every Mega Man game, you wonder why they don't just teleport to the boss. But anyways, you can see that there's a column above me with a bunch of spikes. If you go up through that area, then you will actually find one of X's armor pieces. And it's actually interesting because there are 2 arm upgrades in this game, and you can pick one of them. If you want to switch, you have to go back to the area. But you need Web Spider's weapon in order to get up there, because you need to create a platform for yourself. I think Zero could get up there too, but there's no real reason for it, so whatever. Oh, and they also put in a full life energy recovery item here too, even though it's completely unnecessary. I was at full health anyways, but good for my sub-tanks anyways. Alright, so that's kind of a nice animation. He just salutes and the entire world shakes when he puts his foot down. That's nice. Alright, so I'm gonna use his weakness here. The weakness of Storm Owl is the Giga attack. And it might not look like it's doing much, but every one of those bullets can damage him. He actually doesn't have invincibility frames until you hit him quite often. So when he gets close to you, that's when you've got to let loose the Giga attack, and it will do a bunch of damage because every one of the bullets hit him. The Giga attack isn't really that much use throughout the rest of the game. It gives you invincibility frames, so there are some sections where I could use that. Oh, also, every time you take a hit, some of your weapon energy recovers. Yeah, as if the weapon tank wasn't useless enough, right? Like, there are just so many ways you can recover your weapon energy. It's really weird. Alright, with Storm Owl down, there are only, what, 2 more stages to go, I think? I haven't done Web Spider yet, and I haven't done Slash Beast yet. So I think we're going to Web Spider next. Ah yes, and what you get from Storm Owl is probably the most disappointing technique of them all. The Tenkuha is actually just an enhanced Z-Saber that can erase certain bullets. You can slash at bullets and wipe them off the screen. Yeah, not exactly very helpful at all. I think I could do without it, but, you know, I guess that's a little bit more helpful. Also, it's a passive upgrade, which means you can't really, like, take it off or anything. Which is one of the reasons why I'm using weaknesses in this whole thing. You can't really take off your techniques. You could choose not to use them, but you can't disable them completely. I mean, you can't disable X's weapons completely either, but yeah, whatever. I think Web Spider is the stage that they want you to go to first, because it's probably intended to be the weakest boss, and it's not a very difficult stage. And you can also find X's leg upgrade in this stage as well, which will give him an air dash, and oddly enough, you can also press X in the air to hover for a brief period of time, but it's woefully inferior to the air dash, so I don't know what they were thinking with that item. So yes, we have some waterfalls that are reminiscent of Super Mario Bros. 2 with the logs and everything. And then we just keep climbing and climbing. It's very fun to actually fly through this stage. Like, you can jump over all the enemies and destroy these enemies, which actually look like the Susies from Mega Man 1. Like, they're not exactly the Susies, but they certainly evoke that image. Anyways, Area 2 here. It's got some interesting things in it, I'm sure. Like, I've run out of things to say about the stage that you're supposed to go to first. But yeah, the air dash is helpful here, because you can just dash over everything and have a lot more control over Zero. There's going to be a bunch of beehives, even though the boss of the stage is a spider, and spiders aren't insects, so I don't know why this stage is full of insects. Yeah, like, I think in the eyes of most people, spiders may as well be insects, even though they're clearly not. Maybe very cannibalistic insects, but insects nonetheless. Right, so we have a couple of interesting looking logs in the stage. You can actually burn them with Magma Dragoon's weapon, whether you're playing as X or Zero, and the heart tank is hidden inside one of them, so be sure to snag that on the way up here. And you can also make a couple of shortcuts for yourself, which is nice because I don't want to spend any more time on this stage. Also, there's a free full life recovery item. I don't know why they keep putting those out there. Like, the thing about the PlayStation X games is that they feel like they're super, super easy. Like, maybe that's just from me having so much experience with the series, and X6 is definitely not easy. But in X5 and X6, you basically have unlimited lives, so it's just not much of a challenge if you get down to it. Anyways, Web Spider. He's kind of annoying. What he will do is he will drop down, he will shoot off one very easily avoided web. It tracks your location, but it's so slow to turn that you can just double jump over it. And then he will go back up and repeat the process over and over. I'm actually fighting him pretty slowly here. You can actually get 3 hits in on him if you are quick enough. But yeah, I've settled for just getting 2 hits. And eventually, when he's past half health, he will start the next phase of the fight, which he should have started on if you wanted this to be challenging. He drops down, wastes a bunch of time while I demonstrate one of the new techniques we got, and then basically turns into the bow spider from X1. I've heard a lot of people compare the two. I mean, he's got the one red eye, so I guess he could beat bow spider, basically. I should not have been using Magma Dragoon's weapon. It creates a lot of lag, as you can see. It's not really a weakness. What would be his weakness? Because you can't even hit him with a weapon you get from Slash Beast if you're Zero. But yeah, speaking of Slash Beast, we're actually going there next. After I explain the technique you get from Web Spider. So the technique you get is the Raijin Geki, which is probably the only weapon name that I know how to pronounce, and I know what it means. It literally means Thunder God Attack, or something like that. I don't speak the language, I don't know. So anyways, the Raijin Geki is an attack that you do on the ground. You just press the special weapon button and you launch this, well, you thrust this basically a big lightning spear forward, which is really cool looking, but it's so slow. I think you can cancel out of it whenever you want, so that's fine. But it is a pretty slow move. It's supposed to be Split Mushroom's weakness, but hitting him with it requires a lot of good timing. So it might actually be detrimental, but I did use it in the refights. Alright, so Slash Beast has a train stage, and I guess these guys didn't value their supply line very much because they're just going to destroy the cars, hoping that you will be taken with them by destroying these couplings here. But yeah, you just make a very easy dash jump over the gap. There's really no challenge there. I don't know why they do that. These guns are a lot more challenging. They do a lot of damage if they hit. Well, actually not too much damage. These boxes are also destructible, which might make us remember the destructible box quote-unquote mini-boss from Blast Hornet stage, but I don't know for sure. I'm just slashing through, jumping up and down, and I think this is where the mini-boss comes up, because after you destroy well, after you jump over the destroyed train here, suddenly there's another train on the same track behind you with a giant fist. How did they manage that? Anyways, this mini-boss, very easily taken out with a combination of the Ryu engine and the downward slash spike attack, the ice move, whatever you want to call it. Just be careful because that fist can do a lot of damage. It'd probably be very easier to avoid damage with X, but, you know, that's because X is supposed to be the beginner's character, I suppose. I think they outright say in X5 that X is meant for beginners and 0 is meant for more advanced play, which is pretty accurate. So anyways, more trains, more cars, and more ride armors, which means we're going to get a ride armor here. You can actually destroy the blue boxes with a ride armor, and you can actually destroy the train cars themselves with a ride armor, which is completely unnecessary. You don't really need to do that, because the heart tank is just sitting there right in the open. It's a completely free heart tank. I don't really know why they didn't hide it inside the train or something. That would have been interesting. I'm pretty sure that applies to all versions of X4. I don't know if they would change it. It's just really weird to have that heart tank out in the open. Anyways, you can't take the ride armor into the boss battle, unfortunately, even though it seems like it would be very easy to just go back, pick it up, pop off the train, and then just go along the tracks like this. Like, if you had fallen onto the tracks at any point while the train was moving, you would have died instantly, which makes sense, really. And another full life recovery item. Like, I don't know why they keep giving you those. You never would have needed them in, like, the SNES X games. I don't know. I guess they were feeling like they wanted to be a little bit more courteous, because I guess without it, this game could be a little bit more difficult. Anyways, this boss is really funny. Look at this. He's running faster than the train itself. Is he Sonic the Hedgehog or what? Actually, I think Slash Beast is supposed to be a lion of some kind. Like his name is just so not descriptive. Slash Beast? Whatever. He is another boss that is kind of really easy because all he really does is like jump and try to stomp on you, which is really easy to avoid. And at some point he will start doing this attack where he just slashes from one end of the screen to the other. Very easy to avoid. And if you're on the wall, I guess he'll knock you down. He's kind of like he's kind of like Tunnel Rhino. Or did Tunnel Rhino even do that? The hardest thing from him to avoid is the twin slash attack that he does. It's his only projectile. But yeah, very easy to find all of his weak spots, or blind spots, or points in which he's vulnerable to a triple slash. You get the picture. That's all 8 bosses. We can finally move on to the fortress stages, which are not exactly a fortress. And since we're getting to the fortress stages, you know, I guess I could talk a little bit about the fact that I feel that the X series, like, they kind of don't really put in a lot of, well, first, I will talk about the technique you get. The Shippuga, which kind of sounds like one of Sakura's moves from Street Fighter, but I don't know for sure. It enables you to dash, it enables you to slash, excuse me. It enables you to slash while dashing, which isn't super helpful. I guess I'll demonstrate it here, I think, or somewhere in here, maybe. But it's not exactly that useful. Like, if you are dashing, then you're probably trying to get away from something or get through something, not attacking. Anyways, the thing about X4 and some of the later X games as well is that well, I've mentioned this in some of the SNES playthroughs, I think, but the X games don't really put out a lot of stages for you to play in. And with the increasing presentation of the PlayStation X games, that kind of makes sense, because they must be working hard to create all of these backgrounds and stuff, which is probably why there aren't that many fortress levels. But like in the classic NES Mega Man games, there would be like 8 fortress stages in addition to the 8 main stages, but here there's just like 8 main stages, and like if you're lucky, 3 or 4 fortress stages, but whatever. Like, I think that really shows in X8, but that's a long ways off. So we're going to fight against the nameless Repliforce Colonel, or is his name literally Colonel? That would be really weird. His weakness is the ice attack, and this fight actually came down to the wire. I thought I was going to lose a life here, but for some reason, the ice attack decided to chain damage on the Colonel, which was really interesting. Like, I've never seen it do that before. Right, so he's got a desperation move, which he doesn't use in X's version of the fight, that you have to play after fighting 4 Mavericks. But yeah, I played it a little risky at the end there, but it really paid off. I guess his pattern is just that easy to memorize and avoid. Alright, so the Colonel is also stated to be Iris's brother, which, you know, how can Reploids be brothers and sisters? Like, who builds these guys? Do they both use the same schematic or something? Because, like, in the classic Mega Man cartoon, they state that Proto Man and Mega Man were built with the same schematic, which kind of makes them brothers. They are cut from the same cloth, but whatever. Apparently we're in space now because the Rebel Force has a giant laser cannon that they plan to do something with. I don't know. Like, what were they gonna do with it? Like, if they were worried about being labeled Mavericks before, now that they've got a giant laser cannon, they probably look like a bunch of Mavericks now. Anyways, that was a really, really short stage, too. Like, that was a complete non-stage, in my opinion, because there was barely anything to it. But they do kind of make you play through 2 stages without saving, so maybe that's part of it. Like, does Iris count as the mini-boss or something? Oh yeah, we're fighting Iris, by the way. Like, the Colonel's dead, so Iris now wants to either stop Zero or join the Colonel in whatever afterlife exists for Reploids. Like, if there even is one. It's probably just like a scrapyard or something. So yeah, attacking Iris's main body will do no damage, and it will also spawn these mines that are easily destructible. What you're supposed to aim for is that giant purple crystal. I have no idea what that is, or what it's supposed to be. Maybe it's an homage to another game of some kind. Someone can probably comment on what it's supposed to be. But the most annoying attack is the purple laser, because Iris will fire the laser along the ground, and you've got to get up on the wall. But the crystal is also tracking your position, and it will fire at you as well, so be very careful of that. And if you listen closely to the music, like, at this point in the song for this fight, I can kind of hear a theme from Mega Man 04. Like, if anybody has played that and knows the song I'm talking about, it's called Esperanto. Like, listen really carefully, it kind of sounds similar. Shout out to Iris, I guess. Anyways, we are actually going to watch one cutscene. Like, I saved the best cutscene ever for the one we're actually going to watch, so listen closely.
Iris. Zero. Hang in there, Iris.
Please, stay away from Reploids. Let's live together. In a world where only Reploids exist.
Iris, there's no world just for Reploid. It's only a fantasy.
Yes, I know, but I wanted to believe it. I wanted to live in a world where only Reploids exist, with you.
Iris! 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 Ah! No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What am I fighting for?
Was that not worthy of an Oscar nomination? I definitely think it was. Seriously, like, bring him on stage or something. Anyways, like, I don't even know what Zero was so mad about. Couldn't they repair Iris? She looked in way better shape than some of the people who have died in the X series, I gotta say. And if you wanted a world where only Reploids exist, wouldn't you just, like, move to Mars or something? Am I missing something here? Like, because Reploids don't eat, they don't breathe, technically, and they don't, like, need water or anything, so they could just, like, go to Mars or something, and then everything would be alright. Like, they don't need to go to the moon like they do in X8. Actually, that's the humans being that way. You know, most of the X series canon runs on people being idiots anyways, so it's best not to question it. Coming up is probably the most annoying boss battle in the game. The general here, he's only vulnerable in the head, and, yeah, it's really hard to get up there and hit him. The best, tactic for this fight, I would say, at least if you're Zero, like, X would have lots of chances to hit this guy, but for Zero, you basically want to climb up on the wall there and then just slash at him when he comes over for a talk, I guess. Yeah, this is gonna take a while. Like, I'm lucky I didn't die to this guy, because then I would have to do a bunch of editing, and I would have had to redo the entire fight from the beginning. Like, I contemplated using my sub-tanks here, but, oh yeah, if you try to go under him, he does that move. Like, he's a really slow-moving boss, in fact, so, like, even if you figure out a tactic for beating this guy like I did, it's still gonna take a while. And he hasn't even done that move with the fists that he does. Like, he's got another move that he hasn't shown yet. It can be very difficult to hit him from there without getting hit yourself. And yeah, General, you might want to turn around because I'm right behind you. Eventually, he will figure out what's wrong. Well, that was strange. Okay, so he has this move where he launches his fists, and you're supposed to climb on the fists in order to attack his head, but he's also shooting you at the same time, so it's really hard to avoid the bullets. And the fists themselves can also hurt if you climb onto the wrong side of them, because they've got a rocket on one side. So that boss battle went a lot better than it could have. If he had decided to use that move, then this might have taken a lot longer, and my extra lives would have been at risk. But whatever. Next up is the final stage of the game. We're finally at the end. Wow, only 45 minutes in. And there's a bunch of sub-tank fodder, and then we have the refights. This room has the refights, which are going to be played at quadruple speed, because, like, these are actually twice as tedious, because with Zero, you basically fight them the same way in every playthrough. Like, this isn't like X, where you might have the weaknesses, or a, Easter egg special attack that you can use to drop them in one hit. So this is where the refights are starting to get really, really tedious. Like, they include them in every game because they're supposed to represent, like, how far you've come, because if you used to struggle with them in the refights, you're basically just going to blow them up very quickly, like I just did with Cyber Peacock there. But, you know, as we get further and further into the X series... Oh yeah, this, I just showed off one of the blind spots of Magma Dragoon, by the way. As we get further and further into the X series, like, eventually X's weapons are, like, they're starting to get less and less useful. Like, it's my opinion that the further you get in the X series, the less useful the weapons are, and, like, that's an exaggeration because obviously they're still useful sometimes, but they still just get more and more niche that they aren't that useful. And if they aren't that useful and you prefer using the X-Buster against the bosses, then doesn't that mean that the refights are basically the same as the initial battle? Like, that goes for Zero's version of the fights as well, because, like, I can just take out Frost Walrus here the same way, and I don't really have anything to say over these refights, which is why I sped them up so much. Also, the Water and Jet Stingray's refight is green for some reason. I don't really know what's going on there. I guess it could be Space Water because, like, who set up this arena anyways? Because this is, like, 30,000 feet in the sky. This is outer space. They would have had to live, like, does someone actually think that they need to lug a big tank of water up here just so it can be used for the Jet Stingray rematch? And, like, there's no context for the rematches either, because, like, there's no text or anything explaining, hey, somebody made copies of these guys, and you have to fight them all over again. And if they can make copies of the bosses for rematches, then they really should just make a copy of Iris. Oh, and speaking of Iris, X doesn't fight her, actually. X has his own boss battle with another, not as interesting guy named Double, because he's a double agent. Oh yeah, and I lost a life to Slash Beef there. That was just me being reckless. So yeah, Zero actually, like, plot-wise, it's very boring to play as X because X doesn't really have any interaction with his foes in this storyline. Zero has a lot of interaction with the Colonel, the General, and Iris, but X just doesn't really, like, he doesn't have his own Iris, essentially. Like, there's just nothing interesting about Double. Anyways, it turns out that Sigma was behind everything all along. He manipulated the General into throwing that coup, and now we have to fight him, and he looks like the Grim Reaper for some reason. Anyways, there was a cutscene there that actually explained Zero's origin, but, you know, I'm not watching it. So does this background look familiar to anyone who watched the Extreme 2 playthrough? Lazy Capcom, you're recycling, backgrounds. So anyways, these first two forms for Sigma are a complete joke. For the Grim Reaper form, you just have to hit him with the Fire Slash attack, and X would also use his version of that attack. And you've also just got to duck under him when he does that slashing move. Then you avoid it completely. So yeah, I think you can only hurt Grim Reaper Sigma with his weakness, which is what I'm using right here. So, yeah, no points deducted for using weaknesses at this point, I guess. Alright, so just a little bit more. You know, I unfortunately took a hit with Sigma here because I whiffed with my attack, I think. Yeah, I used the wrong attack for some reason, and I took a hit there. Like, if you do that correctly, he basically can't attack at all. And this form for Sigma is also a complete joke. If you know what you're doing, then it's very easy to manipulate him. First, dodge under that initial slash attack from the scythe, and then lure him into throwing the scythe at the wall, because if he throws the scythe at the wall, he will always do the eye laser attack, and then it's very easy to just double jump on top of him. And for X, you would want to use a lightning web to get on top of the opposite wall. And, yeah, you can just repeat this as much as you want, because he will always do an attack based on where that scythe hits. If it lands on the floor, then the floor is electrified, and he will also throw out a bunch of really difficult-to-avoid boomerangs. So yes, the second form, complete joke. I could have gotten this far with no damage, but I made a mistake on the first form. Also, I think there's a blind spot behind him when he does the eye laser attack, so that's even worse. But of course, there's going to be a third and final form, and this one is actually really elaborate. And pretty cool looking, too. Because it's actually, like, 2 forms in one. Anyways, there's a little life pickup, but you don't really need it. I've got 2 full sub-tanks, so this is basically a foregone conclusion, but let's pretend to be excited anyways. Anyways, what first happens is that there are these 3 heads. One of them will attack at random. In this case, it was the red head. But after one of the heads attacks at random, you will get this really weird-looking head on the ground with a bunch of wires attached to it. It will do one of 2 attacks, then you slash at him, and then one of the 3 colored heads will do an attack. The blue ones is the easiest to avoid. Look at this. And then you'll get the giant gun Sigma right here. And he unfortunately had a bad habit of spamming the one attack that doesn't let me get a lot of hits in on him. But yeah, don't worry about the spikes. They don't kill you instantly. They just do a bunch of damage. All of these attacks do a bunch of damage. The yellow heads is probably the most difficult to avoid. And you also got to be careful with the giant head, because if it sucks you in, you're going to take quite a bit of damage. But you will be able to deal quite a number of hits. The position of the colored heads basically telegraphs what attack is going to be used. So if you see the blue head near the giant wired head, then you know that the inhaling attack is coming. And yes, if the red head comes out and makes spikes appear, then you know then that the end attack is going to happen. Yes, so some choice quotes for Sigma in this battle as well. So yes, I kept getting hit by that attack. You actually have to destroy both forms with life meters in order to end this fight. But yes, with one of them down, that just leaves the gun head, which is very easy to damage because the hitbox is actually on the head itself instead of on the actual gun. I used to think that you had to avoid the gun, but the gun actually has no hit detection, so it's actually very easy to just stand between the gun's bullet chamber, or whatever they call it. Like, stand between the laser and Sigma's head, and then just slash at him repeatedly. So it's not as difficult as it might seem at first, but I did have trouble with this as a kid. I mean, I think anybody would have trouble their first time down. But now that you've seen me do it, you could probably do it yourself. So just got to avoid one more wave of attacks. Fortunately, the colored head selected the weakest attack. No one is going to get hit by that. Oh, and the colored heads can also be destroyed, but there's really no reason to do that. Right, so it's over, and it looks like Sigma has activated the laser and is going to blow up the Earth, but luckily, someone's there to sacrifice themselves in order to save everybody. You know, what's interesting about all of this is that the character that you didn't choose never appears in the plot for the character you did choose. Except at the end of X's storyline where there's a cutscene with Zero. But that's really it. Like, apparently the hunters aren't, like, cooperating with each other. I don't know. What is X doing while Zero's doing all of this? I don't really know. I guess we can stomach one more cutscene with bad voice acting. Yeah, that cutscene with Iris, that was another reason I chose Zero. You've got to watch that cutscene. It is mandatory if you play as Zero. Well, who could this person be? Who does he look like? Who created Zero? It's Dr. Wily. Spoiler alert.
This is what happened to me. This is my fate. I couldn't save anyone after all.
You know, terrible acting aside, it is pretty tragic for Zero to discover that he's basically built to destroy by Dr. Wily, and it might even be best for the world if he just goes away forever. I mean, that's the theme with Zero.
Reploids all turn out to be mavericks after all.
And then there's that line which leaves a lot of questions in the air. But Zero returns to Earth. Apparently he had a space shuttle of some kind, which, or some kind of spaceship. You know, that ship might be useful in the next game. I hope he, kept it or something. So apparently the planner for this game is one-hit KO. That's so weird. I think some of the developers are still using pseudonyms, which is interesting. But yes, that was Mega Man X4 Zero Path. Yeah, it was pretty fun to play through this. Again, after so long. Like, some of these games you kind of forget how good the individual games were because the Mega Man games tend to blend together a bunch. With so many games being there and so many of them, look at this. Hyper Mino and Sensei. I don't get it. But yeah, X4 might be overlooked nowadays, considering the voice actors. Oh, by the way, credits to the English voice actors. I have no idea who any of these people are, which probably means that they did not go on to do anything else in terms of voice acting. You know, I'm willing to bet that it was just the English staff lending their voices to the game, which was pretty common back when professional voice acting for video games wasn't really a thing. Did this come out before Metal Gear Solid? I don't remember. But yeah. Oh yeah, it's actually interesting to note that in the Japanese version there were a lot more voice clips because the 8 Mavericks, they all had like more quotes spoken in Japanese. But I guess to save on production costs for the English translation, what they did was they basically cut out most of the lines that were audibly Japanese and left in anything that was just grunts or shouts, or they left in Magma Dragoon's Hadouken and Shoryuken because even English players know what those are. But like, they just cut out the boss quotes and a bunch of other stuff. And that's basically what they do from here on out in the X series because they don't, like, the voice acting stays strictly Japanese in X5 and X6. Like, English voice acting comes back in X7, where it's actually even worse than this, if you can believe it. And X8, well, X8 had standards for voice acting, but it wasn't really that much better, in my opinion. Anyways, that's X4. Very solid game, very much overlooked by me back when I first played it, so I was glad to experience it again and, like, actually play it properly. And yeah, coming up next is going to be either X5 or Mega Man 7. Like, that's even if I decide to play a Mega Man game again. I would have to practice X5 a little bit, because it's been a while since I actually played it with X, and I want to do it with X. So that's what I'm gonna do. So is that the end, or is there more to this? Oh, here we go. You know, you're supposed to show that before the credits roll, hinting at a possible boss battle in X5. Like, they keep teasing it. The future is coming. Eventually it's going to happen. So until the next Mega Man playthrough, I'm Ephraim225, and I hope you enjoyed my video.